In the year 184 AD, during the reign of the Han Dynasty in China, the empire, once a symbol of power and grandeur, was now engulfed in corruption and discontent. Famine and heavy taxes had put peasants in a tight spot. Large landowners and corrupt nobles monopolized all wealth and resources, while ordinary people suffered from hunger and oppression. In such conditions, a small spark could ignite a great rebellion, and that spark was the emergence of three brothers, Zhang Jue, Zhang Lian, and Zhang Bao. Zhang Jue, the eldest brother, was a physician with deep knowledge of traditional Chinese medicine. Through his travels among the poor, he became a symbol of hope. In his quest to end the people's suffering, he turned to Taoism and wrote a book called The Way to Great Peace. This book promised a future where oppression would be eradicated and justice would prevail. He called himself the Great Teacher of Heaven and gained thousands of followers. Among Zhang Jue's followers, poor men and women from all over China gathered. They decided to wear yellow turbans, a color symbolizing earth and unity. Thus, the Yellow Turban Rebellion was formed. This movement was not just a political uprising, but also a religious and social movement aimed at overthrowing the Han Dynasty and establishing a new order based on justice. In the spring of 884 AD, the rebellion began with attacks on several small towns in northern China. Zhang Jue and his brothers, with meticulous planning, organized tens of thousands of people into their army. The rebel forces, mostly composed of peasants and deserters, despite their primitive weapons, were transformed into a powerful force through their unity and faith. Emperor Ling of Han, who initially did not consider the rebellion a serious threat, was terrified by the rapid advance of the rebels. He sent the imperial army, commanded by Zhu Jun and Huang Fusong, to suppress the uprising. Battles intensified across northern China. On the battlefields, the rebels charged at the enemy with fervor, their cries of faith in their cause resonating against the shining armor and military discipline of the imperial army. In one of the most famous battles, Zhang Lian, the second brother, led an army of 50,000 near the Yellow River. The Han army, equipped with advanced weapons and elite cavalry, seemed invincible. However, the rebels, using their knowledge of the terrain and guerrilla tactics, managed to gain the upper hand for a while. Nevertheless, a shortage of resources and betrayal by some local leaders led to their defeat. Over time, the imperial army, under Zhu Jun's command, gradually captured the rebel strongholds one by one. Zhang Jue, who had fallen ill, died in the midst of these conflicts. With his death, the rebels lost their morale and their resistance weakened. By 885 AD, the rebellion was suppressed, but its effects lingered. This uprising further weakened the foundations of the Han Dynasty, paving the way for its fall and the beginning of a period of chaos in China that led to the era of the Three Kingdoms. The Yellow Turban Rebellion, although ultimately unsuccessful, symbolized the power of ordinary people against oppression and corruption. Their story is an example of the courage and unity of people who, despite all hardships, fought for justice and freedom. This uprising remains one of the greatest social and religious movements in Chinese history. With the suppression of the Yellow Turban Rebellion, China entered a period of turmoil and crisis. Although the imperial army managed to quell the rebellion, the costs of the war drained the imperial treasury and severely weakened the central government's power. Internal conflicts among court officials and military commanders shook the empire from within. Powerful generals like Zhang Jue and Cao Cao, who played key roles in suppressing the rebellion, gradually exploited this weakness and expanded their influence. Local commanders and warlords, relying on their autonomous forces, took control of vast regions of China. Meanwhile, the poor people who had pinned their hopes on the rebellion found themselves once again trapped in a cycle of oppression and exploitation. After Zhang Jue's death and the main defeat of the rebellion, some surviving rebel leaders fled to remote mountains and forests. Still believing in the ideal of the Great Peace, they reorganized scattered forces. In the following years, small groups of Yellow Turban rebels conducted guerrilla attacks on Han army bases and caravans. Although these groups could not regain their former power, their continued presence in rural areas symbolized resistance against the corrupt government. Poor villagers, still suffering from poverty and hardship, sometimes sought refuge with these groups, providing them with food and shelter. The Yellow Turban Rebellion was the spark that ignited internal conflicts in China. The Han government never regained its former glory. With the death of Emperor Ling in 889 AD, the empire entered a power struggle. Zhang Jue, a general who took control of the court under the pretext of protecting the capital, exacerbated the chaos with his violence and tyranny. Meanwhile, local commanders and warlords, including Cao Cao, Liu Bei, and Sun Quan, formed alliances and independent armies to fight for power. These conflicts eventually led to the famous Three Kingdoms period, a time when China was divided into three rival states and experienced over 60 years of war and bloodshed. Although the Yellow Turban Rebellion failed, its ideas remained in Chinese history. The ideal of the Great Peace that Zhang Jue and his followers fought for inspired subsequent movements. Even during the Three Kingdoms period, some leaders and philosophers proposed equality and justice as solutions to China's social and economic problems. The last remnants of the Yellow Turbans gradually disappeared from history in the following decades. Some became mercenaries serving local lords, while others returned to their villages and resumed ordinary lives. However, their story of the suffering of the poor and the struggle for justice remained in China's collective memory. The Yellow Turban Rebellion had a profound impact not only politically and militarily, but also culturally and literarily. This uprising was depicted as one of the great events in Chinese history in literary works such as the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Their story also inspired artists and writers in later centuries, becoming a symbol of resistance against oppression. Ultimately, the Yellow Turban Rebellion not only hastened the end of the Han Dynasty, but also demonstrated that even in times of oppression and inequality, the ideals of justice and peace can ignite a flame in people's hearts, a flame that cannot be extinguished even by suppression.